And I now invite the distinguished representative of Sri Lanka to take the floor, Mr. Satya Rodrigo.
Muchas gracias, Señor Presidente. Mr. Chairman, Sri Lanka would like to wish you, Your Excellency, on your election as chair of this committee and also to the members of the Bureau on their election. Please be assured of Sri Lanka's fullest cooperation and support to you in steering this work of this committee to a successful conclusion. At the outset, my delegation associates itself with the statement delivered by the distinguished representative of Indonesia on behalf of the non-aligned movement. We wish to thank the President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Volkan Bozkır, and the Undersecretary General and High Representative of Disarmament Affairs, Ms. Izumi Nakamitsu, for the valuable remarks to the committee at the start of these sessions. Mr. Chairman, we share the views expressed by the President of the General Assembly that this committee is passing through one of the most critical periods in constructing and sustaining principles of cooperation and agreements on disarmament and arms control, and is concerned that we cannot afford to unravel what has been painstakingly built for the past 75 years. We listened carefully to the address by the High Representative and remain concerned about the continual worrying trends in the realm of nuclear disarmament that has been marked with conditions of global political landscape, an increasing sense of distrust, rhetoric, and animosity between nuclear weapon states, and a widening chasm between member states on how to work on our collective goal of eliminating nuclear weapons. We continue to be dismayed at the annulment of previously agreed agreements on arms control and disarmament, and rollback of many common understandings and agreed benchmarks. Mr. Chairman, it was under Sri Lanka's chairmanship of the non-aligned movement that a call was made for a special session of the General Assembly to be devoted for disarmament in 1978. At the time of the first special session, the world was spending approximately $400 billion a year on arms. Some 4 decades on, global military expenditure has steadily increased. We are alarmed that the total military expenditure has now exceeded $1.9 trillion, the highest level since the end of the Cold War. Sri Lanka joins others in the call for directing some of these fundings to economic and social development for the betterment of humanity. The global COVID-19 pandemic has shown how vulnerable the world can be to pathogens and disease, and is a sharp reminder that there is a pressing need to improve global health security. As every country across the globe struggles to control and mitigate the spread of the pandemic and its socio-economic effects, it is rather sad that more funds are spent on military arsenals than investing in human health. Mr. Chairman, Sri Lanka underscores that the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is an essential pillar of international peace and security, and remains at the heart of the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation regime with 191 states. Sri Lanka attaches the highest priority to full compliance with and effective promotion of the implementation of the NPT without further delay, and respect for its 3 pillars and the need for delicate balance between them. We strongly believe that nuclear disarmament and nuclear non-proliferation are mutually reinforcing. Both must be pursued. The goal of nuclear non-proliferation should not undermine the inalienable right of states to acquire, have access to nuclear material, energy, and technology for peaceful purposes. Mr. Chairman, unless we take collective and concerted action together, next year's NPT review conference will take place in this uncertain international environment. Although the third PrepCom for the review conference held last year could not forge consensus on recommendations, we would like to commend the work of the Chair to present a working paper with key recommendations, and we appreciate the work of Ambassador Syed Hasrin of Malaysia to come out with a balanced document that reflected the views of the entire membership of the NPT and not just the views of 2 main groups. We are of the view that these recommendations cover essential issues where there is common ground, as well as important priority issues such as risk reduction, transparency and reporting, and gender. We hope that these recommendations can serve as a guide to work collectively towards success at the review conference next year. Mr. Chairman, Sri Lanka strongly believes that the total elimination of nuclear weapons is the only guarantee against the threat of nuclear weapons. In this regard, all states have an obligation to negotiate in good faith to achieve the objective of total elimination of nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapon states must make progress in eliminating their nuclear stockpile. We must remain concerned that states are now modernizing their nuclear arsenals with increasing destructive capabilities and developing new weapons and delivery systems. Mr. Chairman, Sri Lanka seeks to advance and promote respect for the objectives of the Biological Weapons Convention and the Chemical Weapons Convention, and continues to call for their effective and non-discriminatory implementation. This year marked the 45th anniversary of the entry into force of the BWC, and with the support of 183 state parties, continues to be relevant and a priority for all states. Sri Lanka signed the Chemical Weapons Convention in 1993 and remains committed in delivering on its national obligations related to the convention. The national authority in Sri Lanka has been reoriented with greater focus on security and disarmament aspects. Mr. Chairman, Sri Lanka calls for practical steps towards the establishment of weapons WMD-free zones and building upon the nuclear-free zones that have already existed, and in particular in the regions where such zones are not in place. Mr. Chairman, as a country that has experienced a 30-year-long separatist conflict, Sri Lanka is acutely aware of the devastation and destruction that is caused by small arms and light weapons and illicit trade of weapons. Sri Lanka is a signatory to the UN Programme of Action to combat the proliferation of illicit small arms and has established a National Commission against the proliferation of illicit small arms to address the spread of such arms in the country. Greater steps must be made to address all related aspects of the problems of illicit small arms, including weapons collection and destruction, adequate legal and policy frameworks, institutional arrangements, proper stockpile management, as well as education and awareness. We underscore that any measures relating to conventional arms control, including small arms and light weapons, must be taken on the basis of placing human beings at the center of all efforts. In this regard, Sri Lanka looks forward to a positive outcome next year when member states review the 7th biennial meeting of state parties of the Programme of Action on Small Arms. And it is hoped that this will provide an opportunity to look at aspects such as national target setting and relevant technological developments as recommended by the Secretary General in his report. We would like to commend the work of the 3 UN Regional Centers for Peace and Disarmament that play an important role to assist member states in capacity building and training. Sri Lanka took part with 9 other states in the region in a baseline assessment for disarmament education with the UN Center based in Kathmandu. We also appreciate the assistance provided by the Center in conducting an assessment of national measures to curb illicit flows of small arms in the region last year. Mr. Chairman, having initiated state-level discussions on lethal autonomous weapons state systems during its presidency of the CCW in 2015, which paved the way to the government group of experts in 2016, Sri Lanka supports the ongoing discussion within the framework of the CCW GGE on lethal autonomous weapons systems and encourages the continuation of the GGE process. In our view, the centrality of human control is fundamental. Legal clarity on exact parameters of prohibitive and permissive limitations through adoption of new legally binding instruments is the only way forward, which would provide clear legal limitations on autonomous weapon systems while complementing the existing IHL norms. Sri Lanka encourages state parties to the CCW to deepen and fast-track discussions within the GGE to address issues of possible development and deployment, and to ensure that all efforts on this important issue are not overrun by fast-moving rallies on the ground. Mr. Chairman, of all the weapons that have been accumulated over the years by states, few are more persistent and more indiscriminate than the issue of landmines. Landmines have a devastating health and socio-economic impact for individuals and entire communities. It has been estimated that Sri Lanka has had 500,000 landmines buried in the conflict area. Mine clearance has been accorded the highest priority as part of our post-conflict development and reconciliation efforts of the government, and has worked closely together with a number of mine-clearing NGOs and local organizations. Sri Lanka stands ready to share our experiences and best practices to help countries in demining tasks. To date, Sri Lanka has cleared 140 square kilometers with 15 square kilometers remaining. While Sri Lanka has set the target of becoming mine-free by 2020 through an accelerated national strategy, various practical constraints, including inadequate funding, has delayed the achievement of this target. We remain committed to this path to make Sri Lanka landmines free on focusing on mine clearance, resettlement of affected persons, mine risk reduction, and victim assistance. Sri Lanka appreciates continued assistance of the patrons in achieving the targets at the earliest. Mr. Chairman, Sri Lanka would like to underscore that outer space is part of our common heritage of humanity. It is our global commons. It remains humanity's last frontier that requires protection and equal opportunity for humankind for its exploration and utilization for peaceful purposes. There is a pressing need to ensure that outer space remains free of conflict, and it's vital that we prevent any arms race in outer space. The full text of my statement will be online, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the distinguished delegate of Sri Lanka for his statement.